At 18, while my classmates were popping confetti at graduation parties, I stood barefoot on a concrete driveway, watching my family drive away with the last of our belongings, without me. I wasn't even surprised. Somewhere deep down, I knew this was coming. But knowing doesn't make it hurt less. It just dulls the initial shock, like watching a train wreck in slow motion that you can't stop. Hi, I'm Sierra Dalton, and if this story finds you at rock bottom or close to it, please subscribe. Not because I want to be famous, but because maybe, just maybe, you'll see a little of yourself in what I'm about to share. This isn't just a story about being abandoned. It's about what happened next. About how I clawed my way back and found a purpose so much bigger than the family who left me behind. That morning, I woke up to the sound of boxes being shuffled and drawers slamming shut. I rubbed my eyes and walked down the hall. My mother barely glanced at me. "You're up," she said flatly. Dad was at the front door, clipboard in hand, his truck parked out front with a trailer hitched. It wasn't moving day. At least, not for me. "Where's everything going?" I asked. My voice cracked in a way that made me sound younger than I wanted. My mother avoided eye contact. My father, a man who believed eye contact was a form of confrontation, muttered, "It's just better this way." "What is?" No one answered. My little brother Liam stood in the corner, gripping his stuffed fox. He was 8. His lip trembled like he understood but couldn't put words to it. I crouched down and hugged him so tightly I felt his little heart pounding through his chest. He whispered, "I didn't want you to get in trouble." "I'm sorry." I didn't know what he meant. I still don't. That was the last thing I heard before the front door slammed shut. They left me with a trash bag full of clothes and the spare bedroom mattress, stripped bare. No note. No goodbye. Not even a fake reason. Just silence and the ticking of the kitchen clock. I sat on the floor for hours. No crying. No screaming. Just sitting there like a ghost in my own house. The air smelled like moving boxes and leftover lies. By sundown, it was real. They weren't coming back. I picked up the phone and called Karina, my best friend. I didn't even say hello. Just, they left. She didn't ask who. She already knew. Karina's mom, who barely made ends meet cleaning houses, drove 20 minutes across town in her beat-up sedan just to get me. She didn't have a spare bedroom, so I stayed in their laundry room beside the washing machine. I slept curled on an old mattress topper with a portable fan humming in the corner. And you know what? It was the first place in years where I didn't feel like I had to earn my right to exist. I got a job scrubbing dishes at a diner the next day. My arms ached. My fingernails cracked. But I showed up early and stayed late because work meant I didn't have time to fall apart. I told no one what happened. Not my manager, not my coworkers. It was easier to pretend I was just some quiet girl trying to save up for college. But every time someone asked if I had family in town, something inside me tightened. What do you say to that? They moved away. We're not close. They're gone. All lies. All true. Some nights, I sat in the diner's freezer just to cry. That's where no one could hear me. That's where I let out the rage and heartbreak and betrayal without scaring anyone away. And yet, in that laundry room surrounded by folded towels and detergent fumes, I started to see the pieces of myself more clearly. I wasn't worthless. I wasn't a burden. I was just unfinished. At work, I met this regular customer named Miss Anita, an older woman with sharp lipstick and a stare that saw straight through you. She always tipped exactly $5 and said, "For your dreams." One day, I finally asked, "Why do you say that?" She said, "Because you look like a girl who forgot she had any." That night, I pulled out an old notebook from my duffel bag and began to write. Not about my parents. Not about pain. I wrote about what I wanted. To help people. To find meaning. To matter. I started volunteering at a local community center. At first, just cleaning up. But then I started helping with tutoring programs, kids from low-income homes, some who'd been through worse than me. I was good at it. I didn't expect to be, but I was. I wasn't just showing up, I was connecting. These kids didn't care that my family left me. They cared that I saw them, heard them, believed in them. And in showing up for them, I started showing up for myself. I enrolled in night classes for social work. Every dollar I earned at the diner went toward tuition. I read textbooks during my breaks and took notes while folding laundry. I failed my first midterm and almost quit, but Karina looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You already survived being left. Don't quit on yourself now." I didn't. And slowly, the fear that my parents had taken my future when they left started to unravel. They didn't take my future. They just gave me a reason to build it differently. One night, I walked past the old house, the one they left me in. It was sold. Painted a different color. New curtains in the window. I stood at the end of the driveway, the same one where I'd watched them leave, and whispered, "Thank you." Because if they hadn't left, I never would have found out how strong I actually was. This isn't the end of my story. In fact, it's only the beginning. The moment they walked away, they gave me the freedom to choose who I wanted to be without them. And trust me, that girl? She's just getting started. There's something strange about looking at yourself in the mirror after you've been abandoned. At first, you look for clues, some defect or stain on your character that explains why you were the one left behind. You wonder if your laugh was too loud, your ambition too inconvenient, your silence not silent enough. But eventually, you stop looking for what's wrong with you and start searching for who you're meant to become. After the night classes started, my life was chaos on a clock. Diner shifts from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m., a quick shower at Karina's, then off to school by 5 p.m. I'd grab a cup of vending machine coffee, sit in the back of the classroom with my thrifted laptop, and try to keep my eyes open long enough to absorb words like policy and advocacy. It wasn't glamorous. My hair was often still damp, my jeans smelled faintly like grilled cheese, and my notebooks were a mosaic of grease smudges and late-night doodles. But I was there. And being there mattered more than I realized. One evening, my professor, Dr. Halperin, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who wore cardigans like battle armor, asked to speak with me after class. I thought I was in trouble. Instead, she said, "You write like someone who's lived a dozen lives." I shrugged. Just the one. A hard one. She nodded, then handed me a flyer. State Social Advocacy Conference. Essay competition. Winner gets $5,000 and a spotlight speaking slot. Enter, she said. You've got something to say. Say it. I laughed. I'm just a girl who washes dishes and reads about trauma on my lunch breaks. No, she corrected, you're a girl who gets it. That's rarer than you think. I went home that night, opened my beat-up laptop, and stared at the blinking cursor for what felt like an hour. What could I even say? I wrote. The first time I realized I wasn't broken, just abandoned, was the day I held space for a crying child who thought the world forgot him. I knew that feeling. I had lived it. But in comforting him, I found something I never expected, purpose. I kept writing. 4 hours. About the power of being seen. About how abandonment doesn't destroy you, it shapes you, refines you, forces you to build a home inside yourself. When I hit submit, I didn't expect anything. A month later, I got the email, I'd won. The prize wasn't just money. It was the first time I saw my name, Sierra Dalton, on something that mattered. Not as an emergency contact. Not as a rejected applicant. But as a voice. The conference was in a ballroom downtown, the kind with gold-plated elevators and too much perfume in the air. I wore a $9 thrifted blazer, scrubbed my sneakers until they gleamed, and stepped up to a podium in front of a crowd of professionals, advocates, and students with last names like Whitmore and Sinclair. I spoke for 6 minutes. Told my story, not the sob version, but the honest one. I was abandoned by the people who were supposed to love me most. But in that silence, I heard something new. A calling. And that calling was louder than the shame. After I finished, the applause felt surreal. But what stuck with me most wasn't the claps. It was the line of young women who waited afterward, eyes red, hands shaking. One said, "Your story, it's mine too." Another whispered, "You made me feel seen." And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like the girl left behind. I felt like the woman people needed. Word got around. I got invited to speak at local high schools, shelters, and one incredibly intense youth detention center where a boy named Rashad asked me, "Why didn't you just give up?" I smiled. Because I wanted to know what would happen if I didn't. That answer? It stuck with me more than it did with him. I started a blog. I called it the Left Behind Diaries. At first, it was just a journal. Then it became a movement. People sent messages, stories, letters. A girl in Arizona whose mom left her at a gas station. A boy in New Jersey kicked out for being gay. A woman in her 40s who was still trying to prove her worth to a mother who never hugged her. Their pain looked different. But the ache was the same. I wasn't alone. And neither were they. But it wasn't all triumph. There were days I broke down in public restrooms. Nights I questioned everything. Weeks when tuition deadlines loomed like cliffs and my bank account mocked me. One Friday night, I found myself at a bus stop crying silently into my scarf after overdrafting my checking account by $19. That's when Miss Anita showed up again. She didn't ask what was wrong. She just sat beside me, pulled a wrapped sandwich from her purse, and said, "When your heart feels heavy, feed your stomach first. The soul's easier after that." That sandwich was ham and mustard and magic. I told her about the blog, the speaking events, the scholarship essay I was thinking of writing. She said, "You know what your real gift is? Not surviving. Translating. You know how to take pain and make it speak." The next morning, I applied for a statewide fellowship that trained young advocates to develop community programs. A month later, I got in. My project idea? A hotline for young adults in crisis, not kids, not full-grown adults, but the forgotten ones. The ones like me. I called it 18 and Invisible. It launched as a late-night text line with volunteers from my college. It got 43 messages the first week. By the third month, we hit 1,200. We weren't therapists, we were listeners. And sometimes, that was enough. I remember one message from a 19-year-old girl named Jessa. She texted, "I haven't eaten in 2 days. I'm scared if I go to a shelter, I'll never get out." We sent her resources. Checked in every day. 2 months later, she sent a picture, her at a community college orientation, holding up her student ID like it was gold. I cried for hours. That's when it hit me. My family may have left me with nothing. But their absence made room for something extraordinary. And I was just getting started. I didn't know what it felt like to belong until I created a space where others could. 18 and Invisible had started with a borrowed laptop, a group chat of volunteers, and a Google form. But 6 months in, we were getting daily texts from all across the state, from parking lots, dorm rooms, shelters, even library computers. Each message carried the same silent scream, "I exist. Please don't look through me." We were small, unfunded, unofficial. But to hundreds of young people, we were the only voice that replied at 2:17 a.m. I was still working diner shifts, still living in Karina's family laundry room, but now my nights were split between class papers and crisis messages. And while my own foundation still felt wobbly, I found balance in helping others build theirs. Then one message changed everything. It was from a local reporter named Kim Yates. Her email subject line read, "You're saving lives. Let's talk." I thought it was a prank. But it wasn't. Kim had heard about our program through a guidance counselor who noticed her students staying after school just to use the library computers and text the hotline. She asked to interview me for the Sunday feature in the River County Post. I nearly declined. Publicity meant visibility, and visibility meant questions. Questions meant my past would surface. But something in me said yes. The day the article ran, the front page showed a picture of me in my thrift store blazer, sitting on a folding chair at the community center with a headline, "Left Behind, Now Lifting Others, the voice behind the crisis text line." I expected judgment. Instead, we got $12,000 in donations by the end of the week. I didn't even know how to open a non-profit bank account. I had to Google everything: how to register a 501c3, how to write a grant proposal, how to file taxes as a non-profit. But I did it. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just reacting to life, I was building it. I rented a tiny office space above an old dance studio. The floors creaked. The ceiling leaked in the corner. But it was ours. I taped a printed sign on the door. 18 and Invisible HQ, you matter here. When I unlocked that door for the first time, I cried. Not loud, ugly sobs, just a quiet stream of tears for the girl who had once been left with nothing but trash bags and silence. That girl had a key now. I hired our first staff member, a senior named Tanya who had aged out of foster care and wanted to give the system hell. She was fierce, brilliant, and totally unimpressed by my emotional speeches, which meant I trusted her with everything. We expanded the text line hours, got better software, partnered with local shelters and schools to create a referral network. We were real now. But growth came with shadows. One night, after a city council meeting where I spoke about funding needs, I got a message on our site's inbox. You think you're a hero, Sierra? Your own parents didn't want you. That says everything. No name. No return address. At first, I laughed it off. Then I stared at the screen for too long, letting the words sink in. Maybe it was true. Maybe some part of me still carried that question. What if they left because I deserved it? But then I opened a new tab. There, in our system, was a message from someone named JM. I don't know why you built this, but I'm alive because of it. Thank you. I pinned that message to my wall. That's what I would believe. The past didn't get to define me. The present did. And in my present, I was needed. The biggest surprise came in the form of a letter, an invitation to speak at the National Youth Advocacy Conference in D.C. I thought they meant as an attendee. No. They wanted me as a keynote speaker. Me. The girl with a mattress in a laundry room, a bank account that still dipped below $50, and a heart that sometimes beat too loud from fear. Karina and I screamed when the letter came. She even did a little dance with her cat wrapped around her neck like a stole. We fundraised, borrowed a friend's car, and drove 9 hours through rain and doubt to get there. At the conference, I stood in a room of over 300 people, senators, professors, non-profit CEOs, and I told the truth. I wasn't supposed to make it here. I was supposed to disappear. But pain doesn't get the final word. Purpose does. I spoke about systems that forget the kids on the edge of adulthood. About being too old for foster care and too young for stability. About how no one teaches you how to file taxes when your parents are gone or how to pay rent when you're still learning who you are. Afterward, a senator's aide handed me a card. Call us, she said. We'd like to discuss supporting your program. I couldn't breathe. The girl who had once searched couches for quarters to buy instant noodles was now being offered federal support for a program she built from scratch. Back in the hotel room, I stood in front of the mirror. Not to find what was broken, but to see the woman I was becoming. The eyes staring back at me were tired, yes, but filled with something new. Belief. Not in the world. In myself. Because somewhere between the dishwashing shifts, the tear-stained textbooks, and the 3 a.m. crisis texts, I'd stopped being the girl they left behind, and started being the woman they could never have imagined I'd become. 3 months after the DC conference, my life moved faster than I could process. We secured our first small government grant. It wasn't millions, but it allowed us to hire 2 more full-time responders, add weekend coverage to the text line, and open a second shared office space closer to the shelters. I was doing interviews on local radio stations and podcasts, being invited to panel discussions, even featured on a national blog that called me a Gen Z changemaker. That title made me laugh. A year ago, I was sleeping beside a dryer. Now people wanted my opinion on public policy. But just when you think life's momentum will carry you smoothly forward, something always jerks the wheel. It came in the form of a plain white envelope. No return address. Just my name, handwritten in familiar cursive I hadn't seen in almost 2 years. I knew who it was from the moment I held it. My mother. I froze in the lobby of our office, envelope in one hand, coffee in the other. Tanya noticed. You okay? I nodded. Lied. I didn't open the letter there. I carried it home like it was a live wire. I sat on the edge of my mattress, yes, still in Karina's laundry room, and stared at it for hours. When I finally opened it, my hands shook. Sierra, I don't expect you to read this. I'm writing it more for me than for you. We didn't know how to handle you. You were too strong-willed, too emotional, too loud about things we were trying to ignore. Your father thought tough love would force you to change. I didn't fight him hard enough. I don't know if that makes me weak or just scared. Probably both. We didn't think you'd survive without us. But you did. I heard about your work. I saw your face in the paper. Your brother is proud of you. He shows your photo to his teachers. If you ever want to talk, I included a number. Love, Mom. No apology. Just vague regret and a dangling invitation to revisit pain. I stared at that line. We didn't think you'd survive without us. The arrogance of it. And yet, part of me wept. Not because I wanted them back, but because I finally understood they'd been wrong. I had survived. Not just survived. Thrived. But the little girl inside me, the one who used to beg for praise and swallow her voice, still ached. I folded the letter. Didn't call the number. Not yet. Instead, I focused on the one thing I could control, the mission. Our text line passed 10,000 total messages. One of our volunteers, Jackson, suggested we host a workshop for teens aging out of foster care. A life boot camp, how to open a bank account, navigate housing applications, apply for jobs. We called it Life After 18. We expected 25 kids. 74 showed up. The conference room we'd borrowed from a local church was packed wall to wall with nervous eyes and cautious hearts. We served pizza, gave away donated hygiene kits, played music that made people relax. Then I stood in front of them and said the one thing no one had ever told me at that age. You are not a mistake. You are not forgotten. And you are not alone. After the session, a tall, quiet girl named Imani came up to me. She couldn't have been more than 19, but her eyes looked 30. She said, "You said you lived in a laundry room?" "Still do," I smiled. She nodded. "Then I'm not embarrassed about where I'm sleeping anymore." She hugged me. Tightly. Like someone who hadn't been held in years. Moments like that, they're why I keep going. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the pressure. Growth came with weight. Meetings. Proposals. Accounting. HR policies. Everyone wanted something. And suddenly, I wasn't just the girl who had been left, I was now the woman being pulled in every direction. I missed the quiet. One night, I walked to the laundromat down the block, not to do laundry, just to sit. The hum of machines felt oddly comforting. I watched clothes spin and thought about who I'd become. The truth is, I was tired. Soul tired. And that's when I remembered something Miss Anita had told me months ago. Purpose is beautiful, baby. But you still gotta rest. Even candles burn out. So I made my first executive decision, a 2-day retreat for our team. No emails. No hotlines. Just breathing. We found a cheap cabin near Lake Cumberland and piled into 2 cars like high schoolers going on a camping trip. We laughed over burned marshmallows, cried during late-night truth sessions, and slept without alarms for once. That trip reminded me of something vital. You can't pour into others if your own cup is bone dry. When we got back, everything felt clearer. I started restructuring responsibilities, delegating more, trusting my team. And I began writing again, not reports or blog posts, but journal entries. Letters to the past versions of myself. To the girl in the driveway. You survived. Not because you were strong, but because you refused to quit. To the girl in the laundry room. You were never dirty. The world just couldn't see your shine yet. To the woman now. This is your life. Don't forget to live it. I still kept my mother's letter in the drawer. Not as a wound. As a record. A reminder that sometimes, closure doesn't come from the person who hurt you, but from the person you became after. I never imagined the phrase homecoming could make me nervous. But there I was, back in Riverdale High's gymnasium, the same place I'd received my diploma alone, in borrowed shoes, with no one in the bleachers cheering my name. This time, I wasn't here for a ceremony. I was here as a guest speaker. The school had invited me to talk to the senior class about resilience, community, and purpose. What they didn't know was that it was this school where I once spent my lunch breaks hiding in the library, pretending I was doing homework while silently praying no one would notice I wasn't eating. When I walked into the building that day, everything looked smaller. The trophy cases, the squeaky linoleum floors, the smell of cafeteria pizza that somehow hadn't changed in a decade. It all felt familiar, but I wasn't the same. I walked past my old locker. Still dented. Still scuffed with peeling stickers. And I smiled. Because the girl who used to whisper "I'm invisible" had become the woman being invited to speak into a microphone. The auditorium was full. Rows of kids in oversized hoodies and glittery eyeshadow, scrolling their phones while teachers tried to wrangle attention. I stepped on stage and took a breath. I used to sit where you're sitting. Right over there. Second row, behind the kid who always played Candy Crush in class. Some of them laughed. I didn't have it figured out. I didn't even have a plan. My parents left me right after I turned 18. Packed up, drove off, and didn't look back. For a while, I thought maybe that meant I wasn't worth staying for. You could have heard a pin drop. But here's the truth, your worth isn't defined by who walks away. It's defined by what you build after they do. When the assembly ended, a girl approached me. Pink hair, eyes full of tears she was pretending weren't there. She whispered, "Thank you. My dad left last month. I haven't told anyone yet." I handed her a card. "Text me. Anytime." It wasn't just a speech. It was a return. Not to my past, but to my power over it. Later that night, I sat with Karina in our favorite booth at Lou's Diner, where this whole journey began. We split fries and laughed about how my first shifts there had nearly made me quit life. "Remember when you broke 3 mugs in 1 hour?" she grinned. "And blamed the uneven floor?" I said, "It wasn't the floor." Karina had been more than a friend. She was the life raft when I didn't know how to swim. Her mother, Ms. Dina, had slipped me $20 bills when I didn't have food, pretended the hallway mattress was part of a new minimalist trend. I'd been living there for almost 2 years now. Quietly, respectfully. But it was time. That night, I told them I was moving out. "You sure?" Ms. Dina asked. "You can stay as long as you need." "I know. And that's what makes it the right time." I hugged them both, holding back tears. With a combination of savings and a small housing grant connected to my non-profit work, I rented my first apartment, a tiny studio above a flower shop that always smelled like lavender and rain. It wasn't fancy. The heater made a clicking sound, the bathroom tiles were pink, and the neighbors upstairs had questionable music taste. But it was mine. I bought a used bookshelf from a thrift store and filled it with every journal I'd ever written in. On the wall above my desk, I hung the very first 18 and invisible flyer. Wrinkled, misaligned font, black and white. A reminder that even messy beginnings can bloom into something meaningful. 1 week later, something happened that felt like the universe testing me. I was sitting on my floor assembling a bookshelf when I got a phone call from an unknown number. It was Liam, my little brother. "Sierra," he said. His voice was deeper now. More grown. "Liam." My heart nearly stopped. I found your number online. I didn't know if I should call." "I'm so glad you did." There was a long pause. Then he said quietly, "I miss you." I closed my eyes. Tried not to fall apart. "I miss you too, buddy." He told me he was 16 now. That he had a new dog. That mom was better, but still never talked about what happened. That dad had lost his job and gotten bitter. That he'd read about me online and kept hoping I'd reach out, but figured I didn't want to see them again. "I always wanted to see you," I said. He asked if we could meet. We agreed on a Saturday afternoon at a park we used to go to as kids. When I saw him walking toward me, taller, leaner, but still with the same uncertain eyes, I wanted to run to him. Instead, I stood frozen until he smiled. Then I cried. We hugged for a full minute. Neither of us said anything. That day, we sat on a bench eating snow cones, talking like no time had passed. He told me about his love for drawing, how he wanted to study architecture, and how sometimes he felt like the ghost of our broken family. "You're not a ghost," I told him. "You're the bridge." He asked if I hated Mom and Dad. "No," I said. "But I don't excuse what they did. I just chose not to carry their shame anymore." He nodded, like that gave him permission to do the same. We agreed to stay in touch. And we have. Sometimes healing doesn't come with apologies or perfect closure. Sometimes it comes in the form of a snow cone and a promise to try again. Back in my apartment, I wrote another journal entry. This one didn't start with pain. It started with peace. "Dear Sierra, you did it. You broke the cycle. You built a life from nothing but grit and grace. You held space for others while learning to take up space yourself. You're not defined by who abandoned you. You're defined by what you chose to become. And girl, look at you now. Some people chase their calling. Others stumble into it during a breakdown in a diner freezer, with dish soap on their hands and grief lodged in their chest. I was the second kind. And yet now people called me founder. Director. Even ma'am. Me. The girl left on a porch with a bag of clothes and silence. 18 and invisible had grown into something bigger than I ever dared to imagine. What began as a text line had turned into a multi-state initiative. We now had 3 full-time counselors, a small but brilliant leadership team, and even a grant that let us partner with schools and youth centers. The part one still hadn't adjusted to? Being recognized. People stopped me in coffee shops. Kids I'd never met DM'd me just to say, I read your story and now I'm applying to college. One woman wrote to tell me that after hearing me speak, she left an abusive marriage and started her own support group for teen moms. Every time I read something like that, I had to take a minute, breathe, and remember, this ripple effect started with pain. But it kept moving because of purpose. One afternoon, while sorting donation boxes at the center, Tanya rushed in, waving her phone. You're not going to believe this, she said. A producer from a national talk show, The Talk Show, wanted me as a guest. At first, I laughed. Surely they'd made a mistake. Me? I didn't even own a blazer that didn't have coffee stains on the sleeves. But it was real. The show flew me out. Put me in a hotel room with tiny soaps and complimentary slippers. I sat in a makeup chair next to authors and activists whose books I'd read while crying on the floor of a laundry room. When it was my turn on stage, the host smiled and said, your story touched millions. But more than that, your work is saving people. What do you think your 18-year-old self would say if she saw you now? The question caught me off guard. I blinked under the bright lights and let the answer rise. I think she'd cry, I said. Not because she's proud, but because she finally feels safe. That episode aired on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, our text line crashed from the surge in traffic. Volunteers doubled shifts. Donations poured in. The landlord of our tiny office called to say, I think you might need a bigger space. We did. Within 3 months, we relocated into a renovated building near downtown, a proper headquarters with a glass meeting room, a mural painted by local youth, and a soft-lit room called the Quiet Space for kids who just needed somewhere to sit and breathe. On the door, a new plaque. 18 and invisible. Founded by Sierra Dalton. You are not what they left behind. You are what comes next. One afternoon, I stood in the middle of that building, alone. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The hum of printers and quiet conversation echoed around me. And I thought, this is the life I was supposed to find. Not the life they tried to force me into. Not the shame they handed me when they left. This. The purpose. The people. The healing. But the real full-circle moment happened a few weeks later. I was invited to speak at a statewide mental health summit. There were hundreds in the audience, students, clinicians, policymakers. I delivered a keynote titled The Courage to Stay When Everyone Leaves. Afterward, a woman approached me backstage. I recognized her immediately, though she looked smaller somehow. More fragile. My mother. She wore a cardigan like armor, just like always, and clutched her purse like it was a lifeline. Hi, she said, voice trembling. I wasn't sure if I should come, but I had to hear you speak. I didn't say anything. I just stared. The last time I saw her, she hadn't looked back. Not once. I wanted to say I'm sorry, she whispered. Not just for leaving, but for not knowing how to love you properly. I nodded slowly. Thank you. We stood in silence for a while. 2 women who shared blood but not the same definition of love. Then she asked, could we talk sometime? Maybe just, meet for coffee. I looked at her, really looked, and felt no anger. Only distance. I think one day, I said. But not today. She nodded. I understand. And she walked away, this time slowly. Not vanishing, just, receding. That night, I journaled again. Closure isn't always a grand confrontation. Sometimes it's a quiet boundary. A line drawn with love, not bitterness. I forgive her, but I choose me now. I think that's what finding your true calling really means, choosing the version of yourself that doesn't beg to be accepted but instead builds a place where others know they already belong. This journey wasn't neat. It wasn't scripted. But it was mine. And to anyone out there feeling abandoned, dismissed, or invisible, I need you to know. You are still becoming. There is a version of you on the other side of all this pain who is powerful, tender, and radiant in a way no one can dim. Keep going. She's waiting for you. Just like I was waiting for me.